They may have Buck Showalter as their manager, but as usual for the Baltimore Orioles, it's going to come down to whether they have enough pitching to be a successful team in 2014. You know, the Baltimore Orioles, to me, are one of the most interesting teams in Major League Baseball. They have such an excellent lineup with a core of Chris Davis, Adam Jones, Manny Machado, who's right now hurt. But they do expect him back at some point this season, and I think those three guys are just an outstanding lineup nucleus for any team in Major League Baseball, particularly Machado, who, if you've heard about Xander Bogaerts of the Red Sox, the guy that he's most compared to is the Orioles' Machado. Again, with some injury problems coming in the season, but they do expect him back at full strength this season. And you add into the mix Nick Markakis, who's been there for many years, finally really healthy again this year. Buck Showalter says he thinks Markakis is going to have a big year this year. They brought Nelson Cruz in on a one-year deal, coming off the steroid suspension. Cruz can hit, and he can hit home runs, and he's in Camden Yards, and that's going to be a huge factor for the Orioles. There's no question in my mind the Orioles are going to score a lot of runs. They have a great backstop behind the plate in Matt Wieters. He's definitely a good player. He can hit too for a catcher, and when you have a catcher who can hit, that's always a big advantage in your lineup. Chris Davis, as I mentioned, coming off a huge year last year. There was points during the season we thought he would threaten to hit 62 home runs. It didn't turn out that way as he cooled off late in the season, but he's still been a real find for the Orioles. But as always, it comes down to pitching, and the Orioles, to me, don't have enough of it. They do have Ubaldo Jimenez as their number one starter now, and to me, that's kind of a red flag. Jimenez is not a top-of-the-rotation starter. As good as he's been at points in his career, he is not a number one type starter. They really need somebody else to come through in that rotation. And the guy I'm looking at, even though he's coming off some injury problems and surgery, Tommy John surgery, is Dylan Bundy. It might not be this year, probably next year where he'll be at full strength, but he needs to come back this year and hopefully make some strides if he's able to return at some point this season. Kevin Gausman is a guy that they're looking at, another young pitcher. If he can step up this year in some capacity and become an integral part of their rotation, there is definitely hope for the Orioles. You look at Miguel Gonzalez. He had some good moments last year. Again, they need him to be a young pitcher that develops throughout the season. But if you add everything up in that rotation, I do not like the Orioles pitching. I don't think it's going to be strong enough, and no matter how many runs they score, I think pitching is ultimately going to be their downfall. And as far as their closer goes, I know they traded Jim Johnson to the Athletics this season because they felt they needed to shed payroll. But Tommy Hunter as your closer, I mean, to me, that is not a good move for the Orioles. I do not like Tommy Hunter as a pitcher. I never have. I've never thought he's been a good pitcher at all in any role that he's pitched in his career. And now he's going to be the Orioles closer. I think that's a recipe for disaster. So as good as the Orioles are in that lineup, you have to give them an A for their lineup. But I give them a C to a C minus for their overall pitching staff. And I think when you add everything up, it's going to be missing the playoffs once again for the Orioles this year. Showalter continues to search for answers to get the Orioles back to the playoffs. So for you guys out there, as you look at the Orioles, what do you see for them this season? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and tell all your friends about This Week in Red. Don't forget to check out my blog at BoSoxInjection.com and follow me on Twitter at ThisWeekinRed.